Okay, looks like we are ready to go. Sorry, I've got my cat on me. She wanted to join, so if you keep seeing me go down, that's what's going on. She's just out of the screen. Um, so, um, yeah, I think just checking the sound, making sure that we're still good to go there. Do let me know if there's any problems with the sound again. Looks like we're actually ready to go and everything's going great. So welcome to everybody so we can start talking about what is the biggest news in Disneyland this year. And that is Galaxy's Edge. Obviously, people have been talking about it for the last week. That was the video that I did last week, was all about the opening of Galaxy's Edge. And as I was trying to figure out what video I wanted to do this week, I realized that the best thing that I could possibly do would be to answer questions about Galaxy's Edge, because that's all anyone has right now is just questions about how this whole thing is going to work as Galaxy's Edge gets ready to open up. And of course, what else do I want to do but actually have questions from you guys, not just questions that I can think of. And so I do have some questions that some followers on Instagram left me that I want to, friends and followers, that I want to answer first. But then any questions that you guys have, that's why I'm here, is that we can talk about them and answer them and understand what's going to be going on together as we go through all this. So make sure that you just go in the chat, ask any questions that you'd like, and we'll see where we go from here so we can get ready for this summer. The first question that I did get asked is one that I think is really easy actually to get confused about right now, because so many people talk about it like it's already open, and that's like, how is it? Well, it hasn't quite opened yet, but I can understand why there are some people that they hear so much about it, they assume surely it must be open by now, and so they want to know about it. But of course, we all know it's going to be opening May 31st. May 31st is when it's all going to be happening. It's a month earlier than what we were expecting. Bob Iger let it slip months ago that they were expecting the end of June to be busy time for Disneyland, and instead they actually decided to open it a little bit early. They said for due to guest demand is what they said that it was all about, but I don't know if they just were planning on this the whole time or what. I mean, you never know. You can't really tell. But May 31st is when it's all going to be going down. Another question that someone asked on Instagram was what sort of characters we can expect to meet and greet. Well, right now, and I know this from cast members that I've asked, as you know, most of the Star Wars meet and greets are at Star Wars Launch Bay in Tomorrowland. And so, because of that, they're not really planning on moving any of them over to Galaxy's Edge right away, because there's no plans right now to close down the Star Wars Launch Bay in Tomorrowland. Not yet. I'm sure that they will eventually, but all cast members say that right now there are no plans about when it will close, and it looks like it'll be open the same time as Galaxy's Edge. So there's no reason for them to move most of those over to Galaxy's Edge just yet. They will eventually, I'm sure, because it's not going to last forever. But you can expect all the characters that you'd see in there. Kylo Ren, Darth Vader, Chewbacca, Rey, maybe even Boba Fett. You know that the Stormtroopers are going to be there, probably Captain Phasma as well. The biggest additions that they've been talking about in terms of characters that will be at Galaxy's Edge have been droids, mostly. I said you're probably going to meet like R2-D2 there. And also, I don't want to say his name wrong because all the Star Wars fans will get really angry at me, because he's one of those that I didn't know his name, but Lando's co-pilot from Return of the Jedi, he's going to be there as well, they say, to meet. And so that's actually kind of interesting. And other than that, there's some other smaller characters that are probably going to be like audio animatronics, so not quite the same as meet and greet characters you'll see but not be able to interact with. And so that's the plan for them right now. I'm sure that as the years go on and as they come up with a plan of what they want to do with Star Wars Launch Bay, they'll close that down and move all those meet and greets over to Galaxy's Edge. But right now, they're mostly going to be staying in Tomorrowland. Now, the biggest question that I know everyone's really going to be wanting to know right now, how is this advanced reservation system probably going to work so that you can get into Galaxy's Edge. For those of you who may not have heard yet, although I think most people have, between the 31st of May and the 23rd of June, Galaxy's Edge will be open and free to the public with Disneyland Park admission. However, you will not be able to get into Galaxy's Edge without an advance free reservation ahead of time. And then that will grant you a certain return window, most likely, to get into Galaxy's Edge and spend some time in there. So how do I think it's going to work? To be honest, I think that it's going to start off with a system where they're going to allow guests to kind of choose what time they would like to come back into Galaxy's Edge and pick that ahead of time. You know, a system very similar to Fast Pass Plus at Walt Disney World. This is a system they've been using for years. They really know how it works, and I'm sure that they can just take that and alter it a little bit to get these advanced reservations working. Now, whether or not they're going to just ask for your name or whether they're going to ask for your ticket info so it's linked to your ticket, I don't know. My guess is it probably won't involve your tickets because that can get too complicated for people who haven't yet bought their tickets and are planning on getting them later. But I'm sure it's going to be something like that. And then you will get your advance reservation. And when you get to Disneyland that day, you'll go into the park, go back to Galaxy's Edge, and you'll be able to get to the entrances either at Big Thunder Trail or Critter Country. And I'm betting they're going to have just a bunch of cast members set up blocking the entrances so that only people who have reservations can get in. And then they'll check people off and let them in. You'll probably get to spend as much time as you want, my guess is. And then as you leave Galaxy's Edge, there'll probably be cast members there letting you know that now that you've left, that's going to be it. Like, you can't get back in unless you had another reservation. Another thing that's interesting about these advanced reservations is that they have already said that people who are staying at one of the Disneyland Resort hotels will actually get their own return window to be able to get into Galaxy's Edge. A guaranteed one. So I'm guessing that means that there's some system they're setting up to where they won't necessarily have to get online and make their reservations themselves. That is already kind of set aside for them. I don't know for certain, but that's my guess. Yeah, Manny, I can't really think how else it might work. I think that's the only way to think about it because they don't really want to get too intrusive into the guest experience. So that's what I can assume. In terms of when they'll start taking the reservations, I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of take a page from dining reservations, which can be made up to 60 days in advance at Disneyland. And so it's possible they might try to make it happen about 60 days in advance, which would mean later this month. We'll probably get more information on that. I think right now they're just trying to get the word out that this is what you need to do in order to get into Galaxy's Edge, because you know darn well during that first month that it doesn't matter how many signs they put up, how many commercials they have, how many times they put it on their website, how many times bloggers like me tell other people about it, they will have hundreds and hundreds of guests a day who do not know that this is how it was supposed to work and will get frustrated that they can't get into Galaxy's Edge. And Charles, most of this is not, when you say if this is officially confirmed, it's confirmed that this system will happen. How it will actually operate, that's another thing that we don't really know yet about whether or not this is how they will actually operate this system. But I think that makes the most sense for Disney to do it this way. Right now, they're keeping a lot of details at bay, I think because they just don't really want to get word out and then change it last minute. This is going to be a really, really interesting month for them because they've never done an opening like this. So I'm going to be interested to see. I think it's a smart idea for them to do it. I really do, because otherwise that area back there is just going to be crazy to deal with. However, I'm going to be interested to see how it rolls out, because if it's a success, you can bet they're going to do a similar thing for the Marvel themed land of California Adventure. If it gets too complicated and just doesn't seem to work very well, then maybe they'll just get rid of that altogether for the Marvel Theme Land and try something else. Or maybe they'll come up with a different way to do it for the Marvel Theme Land. We'll have to wait and see how it gets rolled out. So it's just why everyone's kind of up in the air, because they've never done this, so we don't really have anything to base this off of. Last thing that several people have asked is, when are we going? In our video last week, I did mention that we were going to be going at the end of June, after all this stuff is over and after it's just open to the general public. But I'll admit, I was just like, I gotta get there and I gotta look around earlier than that. And so I'm actually going to be there for just the weekend, the week after it opens. So very, very beginning of June. And of course, I'm going to be showing to everybody and like posting this online and showing everyone around, because that's what everyone's going to want to do and see, is what's inside these gates that we've been looking at and hearing about for 4 years. So that's when I'm going to be there. And then we will both be there at the end of June as well. So we can actually like spend some good time in there and have some time with the rides and all that stuff. I think it'll be super fun. Are any of you guys going that first month? Because if so, that's going to be crazy. But let me know. Tell us in the chat or in the comments if you're going to be going there within that first month. It's going to be intense. One thing that people have been bringing up to me that I didn't explain fully in the last video, and that's about fast passes. Of course, Disney has made it very clear that Galaxy's Edge on both coasts is not going to be opening with fast passes. And I think this actually just makes sense, given that they're going to be keeping so many people out. It would just cause mass confusion if they had fast passes as well. Can you imagine someone who had a return time to get into Galaxy's Edge, but their fast pass time is earlier than that? Then how that doesn't work for them, or especially if they didn't get a reserve time and they get a fast pass somehow, then they're going to be really upset that they can't actually use their fast pass because they can't get in. So I think that's one reason why they're not opening it with fast pass. However, I think it would be wrong to assume that means that they're not going to ever have fast pass, or that they're not thinking about it right now. There is no way that Disney is opening 2 e-ticket attractions in what has got to be the most anticipated expansion in Disneyland history and not add FastPass to them. It'll just take some time. It's possible that it will open later this summer with FastPasses. It's possible that it might be next year. I don't know. I think they're just trying to keep it kind of fair for everybody right now on both coasts, so they don't run into those problems. I know especially in Florida they run into those problems, because of the fact that you have to choose your fast passes 2 months in advance. And for brand new rides, it often makes people very upset because they can't get their fast passes for these new rides very easily at all. And so they're all advertised, they get all hyped up for all these things, and then they're not able to get on it because the fast pass system just is not working in their favor. So I think to try and make it a little bit more fair, they're just saying, look, for the first little while, no fast passes for anyone. Everyone has to go through the standby line. So I think we can still anticipate that's going to happen. I would be surprised if we made it through the summer and they didn't add the Fast Pass to Galaxy's Edge. The only reason I could see them doing it is if they wanted to add the Fast Pass to both coasts at the same time. But I don't know why they would do that, because that would be weird. And there's not that many people who are going to be going to both coasts just to visit Galaxy's Edge, especially since they're not much different in between the two. They're kind of the same. So those are the questions that I know I've had already. Feel free to let me know if you have any other questions. Thanks, Charles. If you notice, at the very beginning of all my live streams, he was just saying that's good at live chatting. Every time I start these things, it always takes me a minute to get into it, just because there's actually so many things going on my screen. I'm trying to make sure I can keep track of everything that's going on and make sure it's all working. But I appreciate it. I appreciate you. But yeah, any questions that you have, make sure you put them in the chat. Okay, so Jim is saying that the Disney Hotel said the reservations were 3 hours only. Yeah, I don't know how they would monitor that. I really don't know how they would be able to say you have to get out in 3 hours. That doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe they're just telling people you need to get out in 3 hours just so they don't spend all night there. But I don't know. That'll be interesting to see, especially since if you're to get in line for Smuggler's Run, even with them limiting the number of people in Galaxy's Edge, that line could still easily reach 4 or 5 hours. Easily, because it's the only ride in there and everyone wants to ride it. And so then if your time limit is 3 hours, then how are you really supposed to keep that up? Wristbands, maybe, possibly. It depends on how complicated they want to make this for their cast members. Who knows? I'm sure they're going to figure this out. That's probably, again, one reason why they haven't really said anything about how this will specifically work. I have been thinking over and over again, they definitely want to try and think of some way to limit people's time in there, because I know of a lot of people who would do their absolute best to get a return time that's like first thing in the morning and would stay there the entire day purely so they could see what it looks like at night and be able to see it at both daytime and nighttime. And then it just clogs up the whole land. So I'm sure they're going to try and figure out something. Maybe it'll be all done in waves. Maybe they'll say like, this is the 8 o'clock wave, this is the 9 o'clock wave, so on so forth. But then also, how are they supposed to be able to keep people? Are they just going to kick them out of the line for Smuggler's Run if the line happens to be more than 3 hours? Who knows what they're going to do? Maybe without fast passes, the line will be shorter. That's quite a possibility. But I'm glad that they're trying to take into consideration the fact that guests want to enjoy Galaxy's Edge, but also do not want to be trampled on by all the impending hordes that are going to come through. It does mean, though, that probably Big Thunder Trail is probably not going to be the most accessible place through the summer, especially not that first month, but through the summer, just because it's going to be so jam-packed. That Big Thunder Trail is going to be crowded full of all the people who have reservation times who are waiting to get into Galaxy's Edge. Because for some reason, people do have this thing where they want to do something and it has a specific time frame to it, but they refuse to, go do anything else while they wait. I have been at California Adventure before. This was back when Radiator Springs Racers was pretty new, and they it had broken down really, really early in the day, and so there was this huge line of people who were waiting for fast passes for Radiator Springs Racers, and of course they don't give them out, at least not back then when the ride was closed, and people waited for 5 hours in this line to see if the ride was going to open back up so they could get a fast pass to come back later. 5 hours. They eventually just finally said, look, the ride's going to be closed all day, so they could get people to stop waiting around. So if they did that for Radiator Springs Racers, I can only imagine what they'll do for Galaxy's Edge, which I think is kind of dumb. But maybe it'll free up the rides and the rest of the park so the lines won't be as long. Who knows? Yeah, Jim, since you're going on June 14th, hopefully they will have the bugs worked out. I cannot imagine going there within the first week. That's why I'm glad I'm going after the first week is over, because darn well they'll try to come up with a plan to go over any eventuality, and yet still something will come up and it will go wrong. And Disneyland's technology right now, it does lack a little bit. There was one day that we were at California Adventure, and we were trying to get a Fast Pass with our Max Pass, and it tried to tell us that there were no Max Passes available anywhere. And this was at like 2 p.m. Like, no Max Passes available anywhere. And the last time we had looked, they were available like everywhere. So I figured that was wrong. And when I went over to try and get some help from one of the cast members and information kiosks, as I was talking to them, it started working again. They luckily got to see it not working, so they knew I wasn't just making crap up. But they looked at me and they said, yep, this sort of thing happens all the time. So they get bugs frequently. It's really fun. Really great. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting time and a lot to plan about. If you are staying Actually, if you're staying at any hotel in the area, you need to make sure that you are trying to get to the park as early as possible. If you're staying even at one of the Disneyland Resort hotels during this time, normally, like say that the park opens at 8, so you have extra magic hours at 7. Normally for us, we would probably leave about 6:45, 6:50, and we would still get in the park within 7:05, 7:10, something like that. In this instance, you would want to still get there about 6:30 to hope to get in the park by about like 7:15, because you know it's going to be crazy full of people. If you're staying off property, you're probably still going to want to get in line around the same time that other people are getting in line for extra magic hours. So if the park opens at 8, you're still probably going to want to get there about, I would say no later than 7:30. I mean no later than 7:30, and you'll still be backed up quite a bit. I would even say there's argument for 7 or 6:30, just so that you're not, at least if you're there that early, you can just sit in that line for a little while and then later be able to stand up and get in the park, and you don't have to wait too long after it opens. It's better than getting there at like 7:45 and the line for security is out past the shuttle drop-off area, because then who knows how long you would be there until you actually got in the park. And by that point, it's also who knows if you would get in the park. You know that the park is going to be reaching capacity on these days, so plan early, get yourself there early, and spend the time. Normally, I don't recommend things like that, but on days where you know it's going to be busy, you have to give yourself time, just in case. Better safe than sorry. If you show up at 6:30 on your off property, and you're there an hour and a half before the park opens, and you're toward the front of the line, so, well, at least you just kind of get to sit there for a little bit, and you send someone over to Starbucks, get you some coffee or some hot chocolate while you wait, and then when the park opens, you won't have very long to wait. I mean, that's the worst that could happen. Best that could happen is that you're at least guaranteeing yourself that you're in the park. Do I think people are going to try and camp out? I think people are going to try, but Disney doesn't typically allow it. There have been instances, if I'm not mistaken, where they have allowed something like that, but they let people know in advance. They typically don't let people camp out. They do tell them that they have to leave. One way they do that is closing off the security checkpoints a little bit, especially when Downtown Disney has shut down. When the last restaurants close at Downtown Disney, they'll shut down the security checkpoints just so that you know there is no reason for you to come through there. But typically they don't allow people to, but you know, that would be interesting to police, but I know that they're anticipating it. You know that they're anticipating it. Angelina, I heard one of the rides in Star Wars was going to be 25, 28 minutes long. I've heard similar things, and from what I understand, it's specifically talking about Rise of the Resistance, which, by the way, is the ride that I'm actually really excited for. Smuggler's Run, I think it's going to be really cool. Rise of the Resistance is the one I'm really excited for, so I'm a little bummed that it's not going to open with the rest of the land. But I digress. What we understand about that rumor is that it's kind of encompassing more of the ride than the ride itself. If you've ever been... Well, I guess I can still use Guardians of the Galaxy as kind of an example. If you go in Guardians of the Galaxy, you can kind of count the beginning of the ride as when you get into the collector's office and you get debriefed by Rocket. And then you go into, what I guess you would still call the boiler room. Before you get on the ride, you could still kind of consider that all the ride, even though you're also still in line. If you go to the Animal Kingdom and you go on Flight of Passage, there are actually 2 rooms that you go into for like this debriefing before you actually get on the ride. And each one lasts as long as the ride, if not more. So you're actually in these rooms for like 8 minutes or more. Not each, but like total. 8 minutes or more before you even get on the ride itself, and then you ride the ride itself. So it's almost like you have this 15-minute experience that all seems like it's part of the ride. What we understand about it is that it seems like you're going to be getting in line, you wait through all that, you go through all the switchbacks and everything, then you're going to board a transport that is going to be taking you from Batuu onto a Star Destroyer, so to speak. And so this is where the ride is kind of going to sort of start. The story starts there because it takes you off of the planet and into space. Then you come off the transport and you've been taken into the Star Destroyer. And then from there, there's more of the plot that kind of happens as you're still waiting in line to get on the ride itself. And so from the time that you board the transport till the time you actually come off the ride itself, it sounds like that was going to be this 28-minute ride. Which I think makes a lot more sense, because the only rides that long can be difficult to hold an audience. The longest ride in Disney history was at Epcot, Ellen's Energy Adventure. I still enjoyed it, but a lot of people didn't because it was 40 minutes long. And it's really hard, even though it had several parts to it, it was hard to keep an audience's attention. And so to say, like, from the time you sit in the vehicle till the time you get off, it would be 28 minutes long. I don't think so. What that does tell you, though, is that if you happen to get on the ride early in the morning, you're still going to be going through a whole bunch of stuff before you actually get on the ride, because there's all this other stuff that has to happen to get you into the plot, so you understand what's going on, understand the story that you're blasting off into. So that's what we understand now. Of course, that could be very, very wrong. That could be not at all what they're doing, but based on how Disney has been creating rides recently, I think that's kind of in their wheelhouse right now, is to do something like that. But obviously we won't know for quite some time, because we still have no idea when Rise of the Resistance will open. My guess is that they probably are still going to try to open it either late June or early July, which is around the time they were anticipating this area was going to be finished. But now that the whole land is going to be open, they're not going to have as much space to work on stuff, so it might have actually delayed that by a couple more months, and so we might be looking like end of the summer Rise of the Resistance opens, which is kind of a bummer. But we'll have to wait until then to see. Isn't it sad how many things are with Galaxy's Edge, or is that we just have to wait and see, because these are things that they've never done before, and so we don't know. And Disney is so good at keeping secrets. They just hardly ever leak, even when they like tell cast members everything. You never hear from them. They don't talk about it very much, and in some ways it's actually really cool, because then you get a lot of surprises when everything first opens. But at the same time, it can also be really frustrating because you just want to know everything. But that's kind of how things are going right now with that. So Galaxy's Edge, it's going to be awesome. We know that it's going to be, I think, kind of more cramped than people think. I don't think people realize how many shops and restaurants they're going to be putting in there. And so even though it's 14 acres, I think they're purposely making some of the walkways a little bit narrower than they would otherwise. But that's my opinion. And I think it would also just add to this whole storytelling thing if the walkways were just a little bit narrower. It's also something that they've done in Walt Disney World. And since they're not really changing the design between Walt Disney World and Disneyland, I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. They are doing... Oh, why do you think they're doing reservations at Disneyland but not Disney World? They haven't announced whether or not they're doing reservations for Disney World, but I anticipate that they will. It's also possible they're waiting to see how it works getting the reservations at Disneyland first, and if that seems like it's working. They have announced that it may not be initially available to all guests, but they haven't said, you're right, that they're doing a reservation, but I think they have some more time with that, so they're waiting to see if they want to do something different, if they want to do it the same way. Do I want to think that Marvel Land opening will have the same hype as Galaxy's Edge? It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. I mean, Marvel is a lot newer than Star Wars. Star Wars has like 40 years of history behind it, has been this icon. And so when people are getting ready for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, that automatically gets them really, really excited. Whereas for Marvel, people are anticipating it and they're excited for it. However, it doesn't have the same staying power yet. But it's only 10 years old, so we can't really say. I think that it will be big because it's so current. Star Wars is huge, partially because it's now spanning generations. There's been 3 different trilogies over 3 different generations, and so that helps make it really huge. Marvel is current, and I think that's going to make it bigger than it would otherwise be. But we'll have to see. Maybe it won't have the same hype as Galaxy's Edge. I suspect that it will, especially since it's going to be adding a lot of big attractions to California Adventure, which needs big attractions. When is Marvel Land opening? Not for another couple of years. I think they said looking at like 2021 for opening that land. I mean, they haven't really announced anything, but right now they're focused on Galaxy's Edge. It is quite possible that this year's D23 Expo, they will actually spend a little bit more time talking about the Marvel-themed lands. Quite possible, because since Galaxy's Edge will be open, there's no more hype about it. So people are going to want to know, okay, well, you have all these other projects, what's next? So that's what we know right now. Yeah, Marvel attracts younger audiences, Star Wars attracts multiple generations more adults. I think that's 100% true. Kids will go crazy about a Marvel-themed land. Kids are the ones that love Guardians of the Galaxy, Mission Breakout. Kids are the ones that want to see Captain America and Spider-Man. I mean, not like the adults don't want to see them too, but the kids are the ones that freak out about it. And it's their thing. Just like Star Wars, the people who grew up with the original Star Wars, that's their thing. This is their trilogy. They love it, and they will always love that original trilogy. It holds a special place in their hearts. They grew up with it. They'll be that way with Marvel. That this generation, the younger generation now, they grew up with Marvel. It's always been there. And these are the characters, not Captain Marvel coming out now. This will be what people are growing up with. It's a higher, faster, stronger thing. And so that's one reason why I think that Marvel will still have a lot to offer, even though it hasn't been around nearly as long as Star Wars has. But I did see a video that I thought brought up a good point that we always say that things have to have staying power before Disney builds an attraction based on them. Peter Pan was 2 years old when Disneyland opened, and they still built an attraction based on it. Alice in Wonderland was only a few years older, not very much older, and Disneyland opened 4 years before Sleeping Beauty opened, and they still named the castle after Sleeping Beauty and did a walkthrough before the movie opened. And so to say that these things need to be older to have staying power, I don't think is an accurate thing to say. Staying power comes from something completely different. And I think Star Wars has proven it has staying power because it's always been relevant, it's always been popular. And so that makes a big, huge difference. All right, well, I think these have been some great questions you guys have made, and I'm glad some of the information that you shared with me, which is great. Keep your eye out for more videos and more things I'm posting on Facebook and talking about on Instagram so that you guys will be able to know more about how this whole process is going to work coming into the summertime. And of course, keep your eye open. At the beginning of June, I will be there just a week after it opens, and I will show you guys around and show you what it looks like and help you understand how this whole thing works if you happen to be going in that same month period of time so you can know what to expect. Make sure that you can just let me know any questions that you have. I will happily answer them as much as I can. Thank you guys also for just being so supportive. All the comments I got in the previous video from last week. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. And love you guys so much. I actually missed when I wasn't making videos. It made me just kind of feel like, oh, something's missing and I need to get back and make more videos. Ooh, I'm going to have to think about that, Angelina. Opening up a water park in Casa Grande. I'll have to think about that. I'll let you know, because I actually don't know much about that. At any rate, yeah, like I said, make sure that you leave send us questions anywhere, and we'll answer them for you. We'll keep you posted about everything, and thank you so much for everything that you guys have done, and for always being there and being supportive and just being here watching this. This is great. Anyway, so we will talk to you guys next week. Wow, already that point. All right. See you guys. Bye.